an old room that we used to call a storage room, and it's now the sleeping quarters, and we've had,
Yeah.
you know, parts rooms that have now become, a space for us to where there's no censored lights and there's no, there's all these conversations you people have of what goes on. So that's been a very interesting conversation, and everyone laughs about it because they still go, "You sleep in a DC?" It's like, yeah, we do because we're 24/7.
Welcome back to the Baxtel Data Center podcast. Today we have a guest. Our guest is Adam Gibson, the VP of Global Data Center Development at Megaport. He's based in Australia and has an ambition of visiting over 1,000 data centers over his career. He's also known as jet ski racing, chocolate milk drinking, data center loving dude. Welcome to the podcast, Adam.
No, thank you, Eric. It's fun to be here.
Yeah, and it's early there. I mean, it's only 1:40 in the afternoon here, and in Australia, what time is it?
It's just before 6 a.m. So, yeah, 5 a.m. Friday morning, feeling great.
Well, thanks for getting up a little bit early for us. But I understand that you don't need as much sleep as everyone else.
I've got some sort of robotic features. I think it would be that I'm used to, sometimes power napping, which for some people is, siestas or, 3 or 4 hours on a Sunday afternoon. That's sometimes my normal sleep pattern. So, yeah, I'm quite accustomed to bed by 1 and up by 4. So it's normal life in the DC space. As they say, data centers don't sleep, so neither do you.
That's right. That is very true. You're 24/7. Do you have a generator backup for you in case for a little
I think it's the chocolate milk is my fuel to keep me running all hours day and night.
It's
I
your
have
diesel.
a drinks fridge, and there's always a supply of chocolate milk. It's I don't drink alcohol, and that's my go-to to keep me sane for sure.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I think that alcohol drinking is a little bit going out of fashion. I don't know if I should say this in this data center crowd because at socials we like to drink. Although I don't know if you've heard of Adam Huberman Lab. He had an episode a year or two ago on alcohol and just the detrimental effects, and I think it's really catching on in the tech industry. But
I think with the amount of events and the whole premise of going out for a quick lunch, and yeah, we know the sales team obviously have a fair amount of them for customer engagement, things like that. It's almost like when you have a quick meeting with the team, you have a cup of coffee and then you have another cup of coffee and you've had 7 cups of coffee one day. It can get a little bit too much. So I wouldn't be surprised that the alcohol consumption is reduced. It'll never disappear completely. Everyone enjoys some sort of alcoholic beverage, but I think that the amount of exercise we're doing these days of traveling and engaging with customers, is more powerful than it has been before due to the world changing over the last sort of 5 years, has resulted to more social activity, which is great because human interaction has always been and always will be a successful business for commercial conversations at least, and general chit chat of ensuring that when you have a facial expressions face to face and the general world that goes on when you're outside of your own 4 walls can help the conversation and bring more. So I think that there will be times of I'll only have one, or I'm on the sparkling water or something like that instead. And I've seen a few people now starting to drink mocktails, which is quite cool because you've got the fun and the conversation starters of I still get the fancy umbrella, but I can still drive myself home. So it's good to see.
yeah, maybe I should try that. I used to drink beer at conferences so that I could kind of control what I was drinking. I know the portion control a little better. It's not poured heavy or light. But a couple years ago, I had a concussion, or at least a series of concussions. So I I still have alcohol every once in a while, but I've really removed it from my diet, for the most part. So maybe I should try out those mocktails.
I can suggest if you're at PTC next year, we'll go to the Tropics Bar, which is everyone knows the Tropics Bar. So it's a pinnacle place when you're hanging out at PTC. I know Digital Realty and others have had parties there. They do a virgin pina colada, and it's the best pina colada I've ever had. So I take a photo every year I go there and dream about it all year. So yeah, I recommend go to the Tropics for that. It's fantastic.
Yep. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. And then talking about Megaport, what can you describe for the audience? What does Megaport do? What I guess what services you guys offer?
So network as a service is probably the if you want to look at and we've got so many acronyms in our industry, NAS as people call it. Megaport is essentially a on-demand software defined solution. So if you're a data center operator, you're an end customer, you want to connect to the clouds, so the Azures, the Googles, the Amazons of the world directly. You want to connect between DC to DC. You want some internet on demand in a not just local residential services, but high quality with a lot of burst capacity and things like that. You have to work with a partner if you can't build your own, and it's quite challenging to do that. And we've seen people over the years build their own and then just go, look, the infrastructure is difficult, the buy rates are challenging, the product sets are hard. You partner with people. A lot of people build their own DCs in broom closets or little rooms over the years and decide it's too expensive, so we'll go with a big provider. And there's a multitude. There's 8,000 plus DCs around the world, so you can pick which one you want to go into, or put it in the cloud. That's something that's really relevant. But once you put it in the cloud, how do you connect to it? So when you look at all of that application, the network configurations, you sort of want to find someone who can do that. And Megaport is a global leader in that service, where you can literally go from Australia to the US. And you're not paying for the underlying network, and you've got the resiliency, and it's on your time and on your dime. So you can choose I want it for an hour. I need to budget in how's it going to look like, and it's all costed and processed out. So Megaport is a global network service provider delivering interconnection to close to 1,000 DCs. There is a multitude of cloud on-ramps and other service providers, software partners along the way. And there's the buzzword I'll call it of the year is AI. Getting AI, connect to AI infrastructure and platforms, all over the place, because we know that they're starting to grow, but they're not all in your back door or in your backyard as like some of the DCs are. So how do you get access to them? And choosing a network provider has global access. That's how it works, and Megaport's definitely one of them.
So as I understand it, it's like you get one. If Megaport's in a data center, say an Equinix data center, you get a port, you get a cross connect to Megaport, and then from that port at Megaport, you can go anywhere else Megaport is located.
Yep.
So 1,000 DCs, right?
Absolutely correct. So that access port gives you an enablement to the platform itself. And if you want the enablement to become an on-ramp, if you want to connect to another facility, anywhere in the world, if you want to connect to another provider with IX, which is a peering platform, if you simply want to connect to just an internet service, you can do all that via the access port of a Megaport. Accessibility and the platform itself.
Would you say that most of the, I'm curious, right? I would think that one of the key drivers for people wanting to connect would be, cloud connections. Connect to AWS, connect to Google, Azure, services like that. Is that one of the primary drivers, or is it just kind of point-to-point connections between this Equinix, DC in Sydney and another one up in Singapore, for example?
So the original premise, there's something I spoke to Bevan about, and Matty Simpson, two very much pinnacle people in the industry and obviously to Megaport itself. There was a need in the market. How do I get to a cloud directly in a cost-effective way without having to go from a location where the cloud's not in and route different traffic networks and have different providers. So one of the original questions was, how do we get to cloud? Megaport solved that problem over 10 years ago now, with its on-ramp abilities and capabilities. That's sort of its bread and butter. That's its base foundations of what created the Megaport business and its portfolio of access to DCs and its product set of network infrastructure. From there, it has evolved in time, as you can imagine, where there's been more cloud providers, B, other services that are needed to complete the set of when you are in a DC and you've got a rack. In my post yesterday, I mentioned Databank Den 5 and Den 2. They're two sites. We've enabled Den 2, which is extension of Denver 5, and we did OID 4 in Chicago. Now, customers in those two locations can connect to each other or connect to regions of cloud and things like that. That's a core product of what Megaport supports.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then, so kind of tying in your goal to visit 1,000 sites, how many are you up to?
I have to check the exact number. I had a look the other day and we were close to 190 something. So I'm just shy of 200. So that means I'm a fifth of the way through. I know that it'll be, I think it's next week or the week after. I'll visit a couple more. So that should hit around my 200 mark, I would say. So not bad. 1,000 sites in my career is the goal. I think I've still got another 10 plus years to go. I'd say probably a little bit more, maybe 20, 25 years, the way I like to work. So no problems in doing that. I just got to ensure that they're all all DCs are unique. So that doesn't matter if it's the one next door to another one or it's a different continent altogether. But I'm excited to see them all.
Maybe we should make a little thermometer. You know how when nonprofits try to raise money, we can have like a little thermometer for you to kind of track your progress as you go.
I was talking to a developer mate of mine. He said, he'd like to go to a little website where I can attach links to where they are and where in the world is AG today and what DC is he in today, sort of thing. And it was a running joke. I see there's quite a few guys in the industry I message. And I run into and they're like, so where have you been? What sites have you seen? And good to see you today. It's enjoyable. And there's always a conversation that's, I live on the plane. And whilst some of that might be true, it's also, we're getting business out of it. We're getting enablement. And again, the conversation of, would you rather an email or a meeting face to face or at least a video call, that the engagement of a DC, and whilst there are virtual DC tours, to walk through a DC and have a conversation about it and touch and feel it, there's nothing quite like it because these the teams have built it, and these are not cheap infrastructure to buy and have a long life. Being an owner operator of facilities over the years myself, you can appreciate what it takes to build one. So going through them, you understand the life cycles and the fun and games, and I think that's a part of why I like to travel, and people appreciate that I've flown from Australia. It's a beautiful part of the world and I love living here, but it's a hike to get to certain places, and
yes.
they appreciate that, so they like to do the best tour they can and showcase that. So that's a part of the reason why I do it as well. I love what I do. DCs are all I know and I enjoy that, but also means that I want to support that with iMasons and Nomad Futurists and all the great industry people that support in their own little projects to keep this industry going, because it's hard to get in, but it's also challenging to keep some of the people. We've got much like some of the countries we're seeing now, we've got a large rate of people that have been around for 10, 15 years and have come in late in the game. So they're looking to retire the next 5, 6, 7 years. And the way the DCs are growing, the megawatts that are, being populated or, demand driven due to customers and products like AI and high performance computing and crypto and cloud and all the buzzwords that go around, we're seeing that they're not going to stop. So how does someone who likes to build a 100 megawatt site cool that 100 megawatt site and have teams to support the mechanical and electrical. That's a challenge, and that's something that I like to support and push for. So going to these sites and promoting them is one thing. Getting the business out of it, and we're seeing a significant return, that people go, look, we're going to hold and not build because we're struggling to find staff, or funding is changed over the years. So we'll keep the customers and keep pushing for more and more and more. But they need that network, and they want to know what life's all about. So it's a fun time to be in this industry for sure.
Yeah, in the U.S., we're probably, as you know, there's in many different places like Singapore and Amsterdam and else in Ireland as well, running out of power. There's been a
Yeah,
lot of big developments, and we're running out of power in many different spots. And so, not only do we have like an employment, finding enough technicians and engineers to run the facilities, but finding the power to be able to build, to right site to build it.
it's also interesting that it's the power piece, but it's also the network infrastructure, being the power network infrastructure around it. We're seeing that there's been a restriction in certain parts of the world where they go, you've been taking what we'll call 11 kV, or residential incoming power, and then they're shutting that down, saying, look, people still need to live. We still need to build homes for the next 10 to 15 to 25 years or 40 years, and you're grabbing all of that for one building to support cloud. You should take to the next level up the high voltage and things like that, which is great because that means you can still deliver power to homes, but also means that when you go larger, it's a bigger number. Instead of being a 10, 20, 30 megawatt data center, or data center which we've seen over the last decade or two, it's now 100. I was in Cannes the other week for Data Cloud, and ran into Jared Appleby, and Jared's a very smart cookie when you ask for intelligent people. He's working on projects, and there was one, I think it was like an 800 megawatt site. There's a Quinbrook in Australia. They're looking to build close to another 800 megawatt site in where I live in Queensland. So these sites are gone 10, 20, 50 fold from what they have been previously, because they can get more power because they're going up closer to the high voltage, or the generation, or they're generating their own. But it just means that the power allocations disappear a lot quicker, because of that fact. So it's not a bad problem to have in some ways, because we've now looking at, and there's been a lot of conversation, a lot of topic, and it gets very political, but about nuclear. That conversation's come up, and it's becoming more and more relevant from the DC aspect, just because we are very large consumers of power, and that's not going to stop. But also, it's a way to ensure that we can keep the green initiatives and things like that, with reducing of coal burning in that area. And I'm all supportive of sustainability and green initiatives. I love solar and wind and hydro, but also there's the recycling aspect, which is something that we're worrying about in my mind, and a conversation I have in circles as a consultant as well, where they go, how do we recycle certain components? And again, you look at the industry, 10 years ago, where lead acid batteries, or car batteries, as people would know, we put in your car and things like that, they're heavily recyclable. There's a good portion, I think don't know if the exact number, but I'll say plus 70% is recyclable, where the lithium ion batteries that are becoming more common, and there's a better price point, or the same price point, they have a little bit longer lifestyle, which is great. So the life cycle is 5 to 10 years in some areas, if it's cooled and protected and things like that, compared to a 3 to 5 or 3 to 7 from a lead acid perspective, which is better, but there's less recyclable parts in them. So how's the wastage go and things like that? So we're coming to a interesting time where power is very important, but it's the harnessing of that power, managing of the power, and the exit strategy of that power, because people want more of it. So you build something that's a megawatt today, they want 10 megawatts tomorrow. Well, what happens to that 1 megawatt device? Can you replace it? Can you recycle it? Can you reuse it? Can you ship it to a third world country and they can support it? And that's I know that Meta heavily, and Google have done the same thing now, where they're supporting underprivileged countries to leverage some of their old infrastructure. It's
Mhm.
perfectly viable and works well, and it's already been written off from a taxation and accounting perspective, and it's done the job for the business itself. But it's just going to sit in a shelf somewhere, or it's going to get disassembled and not going to get reused. So you must use it in another area of the world where it can help them massively. And I think that's very,
Yeah.
very exciting times for people that haven't had the benefits of what we've had in very lucky countries where you're in the US and I'm in Australia, where we've had that evolution of you know cars to all the revolutions over the years from industry, like the industrial revolution and the electrical revolution. Now we're in, as someone was saying, the technology revolution. We're seeing it, but some countries, skip one or two, which is unfortunate.
Right. Yeah, and I know Australia was one of the early adopters of battery storage for your grid. And at Baxtel, we've had more and more utilities and solar companies and wind companies, renewable companies reaching out to us for our data sets. What they want to do is understand where data centers are located and where they're going, right? Because they want to build in that area or be able to service them.
Yeah,
And I'm drinking from the fire hose, learning from that energy and electrical industry. Um, but I think that what I'm learning is that there are many solar projects now that are coming with storage. It's almost like, because one of the problems with renewable power is the fact that it's intermittent. It only powers when the sun's shining or the wind's blowing. But if you
yeah,
co-locate with batteries, it helps to elongate that time. You might not have 24/7 power with it, but you kind of elongate it over when people are at home at 8 or 9 or 10 at night when they need it and their air conditionings are running and that sort of thing. So I found that interesting.
yeah. And we're also seeing that it harnesses and tries to flatten the curve, and that's something that when you look at solar as a prime example, there's that wonderful bell curve where from 4 a.m. In some parts of the world that you might get a trickle, or you might not, depending on if the sun's not up yet. But say by 7 a.m. it's starting to rise, and by 11 or 12 you're at that sort of pinnacle where you're getting maximum amount of power coming in. And then it starts to again go back down to nothingness. Where if you can harness that battery technology, where you go, look, we're getting more that we can consume, but we'll bring that to that bell curve, get stretched out a little bit more. You can harness that power for exactly as you said. When people get home and they turn the air conditioning on in the afternoon because it's been a hot day, that power spike is the inverse. And that's an interesting world that we live in, is that we're using the Mother Nature's resources, but we can't capture it 24/7 because it doesn't necessarily exist yet. Hydro is something that definitely, you look at Hoover Dam and other places like that, and they're doing that, and there's many different dams around the world where you can get a hydro power plant, and it works quite well and things like that over years. But again, that only has its limitations. You can't put more water in because it affects flooding further down, things like that. So that's your constant, which is nice, and it's just a challenge to get the additional power that people want and need to live. But again, as some people say, it's a first world problem, right?
Yep. Yeah, for sure. All right. So, curious. Going back to your the number of sites you visited. How many data center headquarters have you visited? You probably don't track that.
Um, I haven't. That's a good metric I can definitely pull up.
Yeah.
I mean, there's quite a few around, and there's some very pretty headquarters that have come into that I've walked into. That's something that I enjoy. And funny enough, there's one in your neck of the woods, Cologix, where I've been in their headquarters, but they don't actually in Denver itself. But they don't actually have a DC in Denver, which is very interesting. And I've had that in a couple of experiences where their office is in Dallas, and they don't have a DC in Dallas. So you gotta sometimes go where the people are. Sometimes I much prefer going where the DC is. But I've been to quite a few, and some have spectacular views, and some have quite a exciting time, and make you want to make you want to jump ship and work for them. So, but yeah, it'd be probably 50 plus for sure.
Right. Yeah, I used to work at CoreSite in their headquarters here in Denver. And at the time when I first started working for them, they did not have a data center in Denver. But they since bought, when I was there, they bought a small co-location firm, Confluent, which was in 910 15th Street, the telecom hotel. So it has a
Yep.
lot of that interconnection density. And now they're finally building a much larger Den 3 facility. You should, I don't know if you talked to them about that, but you should hook that up with Megaport.
Yeah, look, I've there's so many sites coming through, and we've had this conversation almost every month on my senior management conversations and meetings of, you know, can we start looking at sites yet? And I'm like, we don't have time to look at sites. People are wanting, more and more capacity from a network perspective because there's more and more, IT or co-location capacity being sold. So I'm going where the revenue and opportunities are before I even drop into new sites of just because it's exciting to do so. It's a great time to be this you know DC life of that, and I'm seeing more sites than I have ever done before, and definitely excited to see more. So I'll reach out to the core site guys, and one will share. You mentioned critical sites and carrier hotels, and that's something that very very exciting. I've done the 60 Hudson in New York. There's a big carrier hotel here in Australia as well. They are, and Singapore's got a lot of them just because they've had an issue or a shortage of power for quite a while. So they've now become very much interconnected hubs in particular. So they're very unique where they're more of a fiber than co-location. And then you've got people like NJFX, which are less DC, more subsea, where they've got multiple subsea links coming in, things like that. Where are they a carrier hotel? Are they DC? Are they subsea? CLS cable landing station. They're a mixture of all three, which is a very unique proposition.
Sure.
And that's something that it's become more and more important that they've all got their benefit and need in the market.
So since you've seen so many, and you're probably in the top 10 or 5 in terms of the number of sites you've seen, I would imagine. Who knows who keeps score in these things? But do you have any data center war stories or data center stories that might be unique things you've seen, experienced, just on a tour?
Yeah,
you know,
it's quite funny. I've being a technician from way back. That was how I got in. I was a network and server engineer, building BGP and cloud servers with Linux 4 and things like that. So and I've spoke about that previously. You get to when you start working in a DC as an operations person, as a technician, sometimes it's you do a late shift, and it's much more beneficial to sleep in the DC than travel to and fro from home and things like that. And the DCs have showers, and they've got not necessarily a canteen, but an area where you can put your food in the fridge, and got a microwave and things like that, so you can be sustainable. And now the joys of Uber Eats and stuff like that, you can still get a better meal than whatever's in the vending machine. So I probably had out of I'll call it the last 20 DCs I've visited and toured, which is probably the last quarter or two. Most of them I've had a conversation with them of, do you have a hammock or some sort of swag or sleeping bag of sorts in the DC, and they're like, yep, we certainly do. So it's quite funny where when you've spent enough years in the industry as a data center operator, in that data center space, where you've had to do something for a customer, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and you start again at 8 a.m. Whilst there might be a workplace health and safety issue around that, we've all slept in the DC, and there's quite funny stories where we have and go, look, I've slept in this corridor, or there's an old room that we used to call a storage room, and it's now the sleeping quarters, and we've had parts rooms that have now become a space for us to where there's no censored lights, and there's no there's all these conversations you people have of what goes on So that's been a very interesting conversation, and everyone laughs about it because they sort of go, "You sleep in a DC?" It's like, yeah, we do because we're 24/7. So that's sort of the funny parts of the world, that the insider jokes and insider stories when you've been there, you can laugh about it.
Yeah, I think you can open a smart hand stick and have them roll out a cot to your cage
Yeah,
or something like that. That'd be great.
I'd love to get some of these DCs to actually have branded sheets for us and things like that. That'd be next level. Like they have
Yeah.
branded T-shirts and hats and stickers and water bottles, etc. But have you thought about getting a branded sleeping bag? They probably don't condone or support it, but I wouldn't mind taking a Switch or Iron Mountain or Equinix or Digital Realty sheets to cuddle into. Be
For
pretty
sure.
cool.
I mean, how many are there data centers that you've toured or seen or heard of that actually have sleeping rooms? Because I think it sounds like they've done it almost on a makeshift level, but it seems to me in a co-location environment where you have many different companies coming in. And I know, way back in the day, I used to do some installs in data centers, and I think it'd be often your maintenance is at night, and
Yep.
or sometimes when stuff goes wrong, it's at night, and or you're fixing it at night, and you might be tired and you're waiting for another part to come in or whatever, and getting a couple hour nap might be a good thing. And so it didn't occur to me till this time into this conversation, but I mean, it seems like just have carving out one room where you have a couple beds that someone can use for the night. I think that would make sense.
Yeah, I think we're now in the industry that we're in. We're now become much like a utility, and in certain aspects, I even think we're like emergency services. We're like fire or ambulance or police, where the technicians are on call 24/7 for an incident, and to mitigate that issue, whether it just be with loss of power or even a simple thing, which I've spoke about to people before, of a car catching on fire, fireworks, a bushfire. That smoke can come in through ventilation and disrupt the fire systems themselves. So that simple componentry, can affect a DC. Now, lucky enough, we're getting less and less of those problems because the DCs are becoming more aware of them. But having like the emergency services having cots where they can sleep and things like that is not a bad idea. I know there's a few DCs I've seen where they have like incubator sort of pods or like quiet rooms and stuff like that, where they're comfy enough and sort of silent enough that you can do it. Um, the issue you face in DCs is the fan noise and the infrastructure. It's not a whilst it might be white noise, it's still quite loud, and there's been facilities where ear protection must be worn. It's
Yep.
simply that high computing is quite a an effective um, problem or noise issue. So I think some of that is the way to fix that, to be pods for sure. But I think some of them are now doing that in more headquarters or outside the DC, where they sort of go, we've got a much better play for you to come to if you are doing those night shifts. But unfortunately, if you are in the middle of nowhere, in the Midwest, or in the UAE, or somewhere like up in the Nordics where it's snowing and there's one or two DCs around, there's no headquarters, so maybe you have to find a room. And I haven't seen designs that have a sleeping quarters, but it's probably not a bad idea.
Right. Right. I think in some large co-location areas that I think that would make sense. All right. Well, I think it's time to do top picks or your top pick. Is there something that you use or could recommend to people? Not something that's every day, but something that people might not know about, that you enjoy or use or find as a useful tool.
Something I found, and I thought about this. There's a couple of sort of things that you can do when you're traveling. I try and not take check-in luggage. I try and do carry-on, and I've now mastered, in my opinion, the rolling of clothing. So you roll it in so it fits in a carry-on, and try and do carry-on where you can, as much as possible. I can do just shy of 3 weeks with that, and that's enough because when you do long haul flights, 14 plus hours, sometimes you have a layover, and that can really affect your luggage if it can disappear and things like that. So try and carry on as much as possible. I think that many people ask where I'm from, my funny accent to some, or you know, the rolling in particular clothing. I sort of go there. There's particular boots I wear, which are Australian owned and made here, and a very very large company, R.M. Williams. You know, when you're Australian or people that they sort of go, you're definitely from Australia. But the whole point is there are some beautiful parts of the world. I'm not going to deny that, and you and I were talking about Denver and Colorado itself. There's some beautiful mountains and beautiful places there. Talking to someone earlier from very close in St. George with the Zion, and you've obviously got Egypt and Singapore, where they're all just beautiful parts of the world. There's no denying that. Australia's got a unique position where you can go beautiful beaches and rainforests, literally within 100 kilometers, 60 miles apart from each other, which is just shy of an hour. So, a lot of people talk and go, hey, we'd love to come down to Australia. And it's like, if you can manage the flight, come down. There's, beaches are different here. You go to Hawaii or you go to parts of Europe, and the beaches aren't the same because the sand's different. This is soft and it's golden and it's gorgeous to see. It's something that you can't appreciate until you get here. So that's something I would recommend is traveling to Australia, exploring the beaches and the sun and the uniqueness of Australia itself. It's wonderful.
Australia is surrounded by beach, I would imagine, right? Because you're a whole continent for the country.
We
And
are, yeah.
so
I mean, there's some parts that
what
are.
beach?
It's a lot of beach. There
Yeah.
definitely is, and there's certain places where there's cliffs as well that complement the beach, and there's some parts that beaches don't get touched at all, just because it's very hard to get access to. So, yeah, we're a very lucky country that you can experience the life of a hustling, bustling city. Population is quite low. I was in Europe last week, and the population of France and Italy for small regions, is massive compared to what the size of the country and population of Australia is. But that's also because we're in the middle and the heart of Australia. There's a big red rock there, and called Uluru or Ayers Rock, but there's nothing there. It's barren. There's nothingness. It's much like Arizona. There's nothing there, but unfortunately, for Arizona, there's Vegas and things like that. It's just sort of popped up over the last 50 odd years, where Australia doesn't have that. So it's a unique part of the world where I think that if you get the opportunity to come to Australia and explore it, definitely do. There's so much to see, and there's quite a few people that don't get out and see the rest of the world because there's so much to see in Australia. So I think that's something that's unique in what I do, to where I get to travel a lot and see. I was in Helsinki where it was snowing and it was a beautiful sunny day a week before, and we're in I think we're in April or something like that, or in May, where the snow should settle, but it's still there. Going to Denver in 3 different seasons, in a week, it's a you're very fortunate, but you can explore so much more by just getting out and jumping on a plane, and you can do that. It's you plan it enough, it's relatively inexpensive. So I've got little Lego architectural places, and I speak to guys who enjoy Lego, and there's quite a few DCs that now build their facilities out of Lego as marketing stuff like that. And when a very large toy manufacturer like that is building regions for Tokyo and Singapore and places like that out of their own, there's a reason why it's significant, because it's a great place to go to.
What companies are making Lego? I can only imagine like a Lego data center. That would be really cool.
Yeah, so SBA Edge, they did a little modular one there. I know that that's in the US. The guys from North Sea, they built a one for their opening. They did a little, built a DC out of Lego, and that was for their DC opening not too long ago, out of Amsterdam. There's a couple of others that I know of that have done it as well, for their marketing at events and things like that. Everything has a as a uniqueness in marketing to be different, and yeah, Lego's definitely something that's cool.
For sure. And I understand behind you those frames are patents, Lego patents.
Yeah, they are. It's something that as a kid I enjoyed building blocks and things like that, and before video games like Minecraft were around, I spent a lot of time building Lego, and I still collect Lego to this day. So yeah, it was a gift from a friend where they said, "Happy birthday!" and here's something that's unique, and I put it proud on the wall because you. It also reminds me of where you come from. These were wooden patents from the '60s. October 24, 1961 is when the patent went out for Lego to which is now a $1 billion organization based out of Denmark, and it's taken the world by storm, especially during the last couple of years where people were locked down and things like that. Lego was very much a huge business, and you can build a lot of things out of that, and the DC space is very much like that as well. It's you're building blocks on blocks on blocks, and you can design it however you want as long as it's structurally sound and engineered certified. Lego's the same thing. So I'm very fortunate that my hobbies and then what I can do either get me out of the four walls of a DC, or I can build a DC with it. It's pretty cool.
Nice. I love it. All right. I guess we should part here soon. Where can people find you? More about you, or where can they communicate with you?
Yeah, follow me on LinkedIn. That's an easy one to do so. There'll be some sort of comment on point below, but there'll be some sort of comments that we can talk about. But reach out. I spend a lot of time on. I don't have other social media. I don't have the Facebooks or Instagrams or anything like that. LinkedIn is my sort of world because I talk about DCs. I'm at a fair amount of events all over the place. So ITW, PTC are sort of big ones in the US, Capacity Europe, Capacity Asia, DCDs, throughout Europe and Asia Pacific. So I'm around. Don't hesitate to say hi and reach out. And I love a selfie. If you follow my my posts, I always post up a selfie and things like that. It's what I do. I love talking about DC. So if you've got an hour to talk about a DC, or you want to suggest to come and check out a tour of a site of your own, I'm more than happy to do that. And thanks to you, Eric, for what you do with your organisation. Without trying to understand some of these sites where they go, hey, how do I get access to it? I jump on your website and view more information from that. So people like yourselves who are passionate but very much behind the scenes and exploring, we thank you for your efforts and your passion in what you do as well. It's appreciated.
Thank you, Adam. I appreciate it. And maybe we'll put a little tracker, a Jeep tracker on our map. That'd be kind of fun.
We'd love to do it. I'm happy there to support it. So yeah, thank you to Baxtel and what you guys do. It's great.
All right, great. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I want to learn about you, and let's do it in a really brief capsule of approximately 60 seconds. So, late nights or early mornings?
I've done both many times. I think late nights are probably better for me.
New York or California?
I'll probably say New York. I've got a lot of friends in New York, and they're a good time. I like to party and enjoy it. So yeah.
Sweet or salty? And I think I know the answer to this one.
Oh, 100% sweet every day of the week.
Cats or dogs?
Sometimes I take the benefit and get a small dog, so I've got the mix between.
Introvert or extrovert?
Oh, I'm totally introverted. What are you talking about?
Meeting or email?
I think a meeting's always beneficial, even if it's like a 10-minute one, getting done, because you can get a lot more out of it compared to backwards and forwards.
Favorite food beyond chocolate milk?
A A5 Japanese steak. That's probably the ultimate.
Favorite city?
There's two places in the world that I'd love to live, and that's Denver and Amsterdam.
Favorite sport?
Jet ski racing is a sport, surprisingly, but it's not commonly known.
The smartest person you know?
Bevan's Slattery. He's an entrepreneur and a telco legend here in Australia, and has built some really nifty products to support. Founder of Megaport and done a lot of subsea stuff of late. He is one of the smartest cookies I'll ever meet, and